Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today we are resuming our study for this week about the Feast of Weeks, known as Shavuot. And today we are going to continue a tradition that's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And that is during the week of Shavuot, it is traditional to read the book of Ruth. There's arguments about why that might be, but I think the most obvious is because it deals with the time of Shavuot, the harvest. Now, the book of Ruth is just filled with a lot of foreshadowing and imagery of our relationship with Messiah. And more specifically, the Gentile bride of Messiah. And so it's important to remember that, the Gentile bride was grafted into the tree, right? Into the natural tree of Israel. And we see this foreshadowed in many places, but the book of Ruth is really a great example of this. It's important to note that Ruth not only was she a Gentile woman who decided to follow the God of Israel and to make those people her people. There's a really powerful line that we'll read in here. But she was also in the genealogy of Messiah. So she is the great-grandmother of David. So she's one of 5 women mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus, which is found in the Gospel of Matthew, alongside Tamar, Rahab, the wife of Uriah, and Mary. So it's just, there's so much here. The point I'm trying to make is I want you to open up your hearts as we read this story and try to catch on to some of those things. Boaz being the kinsman redeemer, Ruth being a Gentile woman who decided that she wanted to be part of that people and follow the God of Israel, the one true God. And so it's just a beautiful picture of that. And of course, we also have the harvest going on, which is, again, why it is read during the time of Shavuot. Now, this story takes place during the time period of the judges, and so it was a period of famine. It was a period of instability. It was a period of moral decline in Israel, and so that's where the story picks up. And it really is it has a really tragic beginning, and but it has a great ending. Again, that I see as a picture of our relationship with Messiah. So with that, let's begin. Open up your hearts and let the Word of God speak to you this morning. The book of Ruth, I'll be reading from the King James Bible. Let's begin. Now it came to pass in those days, when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, and he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, Euphrates of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab, and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. And then she kissed him, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband, and if I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. So please note, so you have the scenario, Elimelech, they venture into Moab. There's a famine that's kind of forcing them to move and to seek out food. Elimelech and Naomi have 2 sons. The 2 sons marry 2 Moabite women, but both Elimelech and his 2 sons die. So you've got 3 widows here. You've got Naomi and her 2 daughters-in-law. She catches word that there's bread again in the land of her people. She's going to venture back. She encourages her daughter-in-laws, to go back to her own people. There's no sense in coming with me. She's basically lost hope. She's like, why bother? Do you think I'm going to actually get married and produce sons, and then you're going to wait on them until they're adults and you're going to remarry to them? No, go back to your own people. But here's the part that really jumps out to me about Naomi's perspective on what's happening with her life. And maybe sometimes we can relate to this. She says, No, you're not going to do any of that. You're not going to follow me. There's no point. It grieves me for your sakes that the hand of Jehovah has gone out against me. Naomi's perspective is that God has turned on her. Maybe he's angry, maybe he's indifferent, whatever it is, his hand has gone out against her. She feels like she's cursed or something of that nature. So don't bother following me and continuing to be part of this, right? And you might, listen, these are very difficult times. They're moving around because of famine. Both of her sons are gone. Her husband's gone. Try to imagine the hopelessness, and how could you feel that God is for you in a situation like that? So now let's look at the response of the 2 daughter-in-laws. Verse 14, And they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. Please note, and my friends, that's my favorite verse in the whole book of Ruth. And again, it's that imagery, that picture of the Gentile bride. Your God's going to be my God. Wherever you go, I will go. Your people are now going to be my people. And she cleaves to her mother-in-law. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, the relationship she has with her mother-in-law. She's like, I'm not going back to those gods, those false gods. Your God is now my God, and I'm going wherever you go, and I want to be amongst your people. It's just beautiful. Just a beautiful verse, beautiful words. She continues on, verse 17, "Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." And when she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So the two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, that they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, "Is this Naomi?" And she said unto them, "Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me." Please note, let's not overlook this. Names in Hebrew matter, right? They have a number value. They have a meaning themselves. She says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. I now go by Mara." Why is that? The name Naomi in Hebrew means pleasant. But instead she changed it to Mara, which means bitter. So don't call me pleasant anymore. Call me bitter. That is what she's saying when she says, "My name's changed. Don't call me Naomi anymore." Verse 21, "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. So that's chapter 1. We're getting ready to read chapter 2, 3, and 4 real quick here. But I just wanted to point out again, I'm not going to interrupt much as we move forward here. Just this first chapter. But it ends again, the first chapter, with Naomi, "I've changed my name. The Lord is against me. He has afflicted me." This is Naomi's perception. You know, it's easy to say when you have hindsight. It's easy to say when you're not in the predicament. But it is true that sometimes God allows things to happen in our lives that kind of force us in a certain place, to a certain place for His will to come about. Right? And we think, why is God allowing this? Why is He putting up this barrier? Why is He allowing this pain? And we think God is against us and not for us, and we think we're going our own way, but really, Naomi's going down the very path that God had ordained for her to go down. That doesn't mean the pain isn't real. That doesn't mean her feelings are invalid or not real. Of course they are. But this is the way of the world, and if you've been alive long enough, you've discovered this for yourself as well. All right, I'm going to read chapters 2, 3, and 4. I'm not going to do a lot of interrupting and commentary for the sake of time. So open up your hearts. Let this story speak to you. Let's finish it off here. Chapter 2. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go in the field, and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. And she went, and she gleaned in the field after reapers, and her hap was too light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered him, The Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servants, that was set over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after reapers among the sheaves. So she came, and hath continued even from the morning unto now, that she tarried a little in the house. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, Harvest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thy eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men, that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels, and drink that which of the young women have drawn. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thy eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law, since the death of thy husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come into a people which thou knewest not herefore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. And then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thy handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thy handmaidens. And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn. And she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. So please note, I have to just interrupt just a minute, just to kind of recap a little bit. She's gleaning in the field. This is a practice that was taking place in Israel due to the law. You were allowed to, pick up the stuff that was falling off. And for whatever reason, Boaz takes notice of her, asks questions about her, finds out who she is, and he says, Don't go to anybody else's field, stay in mine, and there'll be blessing as a result of it. And he's given her food and water. He's charged the men that they're not allowed to bother her, right? She has no fear that they're going to try anything, or they're not allowed to touch her. This just ultimate grace coming down from Boaz. But Boaz gives credit to the Lord for all of it, right? He's like, the Lord is rewarding you. Jehovah is rewarding you for how you dealt with your mother-in-law and how you abandoned your people for this people, and you abandon your gods for this God, the one true God. Listen, this is a picture of our relationship with Messiah, isn't it? It's like we come to know him, and we become a whole new person, and old things are passed away, and all things have become new, and we're not who we used to be, and we don't hang out with the same people that we used to hang out with, and we have family members who don't want to talk to us anymore, and we have just chosen to serve the one true God. Let's continue on. I'm going to run out of time. Verse 15. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commended his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. So she gleaned in the field until evening, and beat out that she had gleaned. And it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up, and she went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave it to her. And she had reserved after she was sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. And Ruth the Moabitess said, He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto Ruth her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest, and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Please note, before I start chapter 3, something that's just kind of jumping out at me is this don't go into another field. Right? That was what Boaz is asking her to do. And Naomi is reiterating that, like, whatever you do, don't offend them by gleaning in another field. Let Boaz be the provider. To me, that's kind of like an imagery or a picture of our relationship with God. You don't serve any other gods. Serve the one true God. He will provide it in abundance. Be fully committed to the one true God, to His provision and His will for your life. That's what's hitting me as I read this conversation. Don't go into another man's field. Now, obviously, there's the surface level, right? It's Boaz's, you found favor in this man's eyes. Don't offend him by going to another man's field. I mean, there's the more obvious, right? I'm just talking about there's something deeper here, more spiritual here, that I think is happening, that we're supposed to catch on to. Chapter 3. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose handmaidens thou wast? Behold, he wineweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man, until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in, and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me I will do. And she went down to the floor, and she did according to all that her mother-in-law had bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly, and uncovered his feet, and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight, that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thy handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, insomuch as thou followed not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now, it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee a part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of the kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of the kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until morning. So please note, she does this thing where she comes and she lays by his feet, and she's essentially asking for redemption. And he's saying, I will absolutely do this. The whole town knows that you're a virtuous woman. Obviously, he has thoughts of her, feelings of her, right? But even though he wants more than anything to fulfill that kinsman role, to redeem her, to marry her, he wants to serve God first, as we can see, because he's like, unfortunately, there's someone who's a closer kinsman. If he will do the process, then that is God's will. But if he won't, then I will. So that's important to note. Verse 14, And she lay at his feet until morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And she said, Let it be known that a woman came unto the floor. And he said, Let it not be known that the woman came into the floor. Also he said, Bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, Who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said, These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Then she said, Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall, for the man will not be in rest until he has finished this thing today. One more chapter. Chapter 4. By the way, Naomi knows the heart of a man, right? She's like, this guy's crazy for you. Don't worry. He's not going to rest until he's resolved this issue. Last chapter. Then went Boaz up to the gate, and sat down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Oh, such a one! Turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman Naomi, that it is come out again, out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, But it be before the inhabitants, and before the elders of my people, if thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know, for there is none to redeem it besides thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, What day thou buyest a field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. So Boaz is pointing out really the law to this other guy. First he says, hey, there's some redemption, you can buy this land. He says, sure, I'll redeem it. He's like, okay, but you also have to take on the responsibility of Naomi and Ruth the Moabitess, and you have to raise up sons with her that technically won't be yours, because the law says that you would have children with her, but they would actually be considered the descendants of our brother. And so now things have gotten complicated, right? And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar my own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner and former in the time of Yisrael concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off a shoe and gave it to his neighbor. And this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said to the elders, unto all the people, You are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's, and Mahlon's, the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren. And from the gate of his place you were witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thy house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Yisrael. And do thou worthily in Orphah, and the famous in Bethlehem. And he let thy house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, and his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thy old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the woman, her neighbors, gave it a name. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram. Ram begat Aminadab, Aminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. And that, my friends, is the story of Ruth. I pray you've been blessed this morning, and I pray that my stumbling of words occasionally and poor reading this morning didn't deter or mess up the blessing that you would have received from God's word this morning. It's a beautiful story of redemption. And I just pray that it pierced your hearts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Your prayers are much coveted and much needed. That's all I have for you this morning. Lord willing, we'll be back again on Friday with a reading from the book of Jubilees. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.